All right. Okay. Are we ready? Looks like we're going live. Awesome. This is going to be an incredible masterclass. So, if you're joining us and you've been in this session for the last 8 weeks, this is the eighth week now. You've worked with me to learn a little bit more about what it means to become a very strong leader, transitioning from manager to leader, becoming that leader your organization needs you to be in order to be able to lead your organization forwards with intensity, with the being right most of the time, and ultimately standing on top of your problems. And today, we are going to work through how to recover after total failure, or maybe more clearly, how I recover after a total failure, and have I recovered after big, big, big failures in my history, in my life, and in our business as a leader, as someone who has been in the process of developing or growing something meaningful over a long period of time. It's inevitable. The question is not if it will happen. The question is, when will it happen in your life? When will it be that thing that just petrifies you, stops you in your track, and keeps you from being able to move forward with powerful intensity? And you thought everything was fine, and then something out of nowhere comes and slams you. Maybe you thought you could get away with something for a while, or live out some principles that, or live against some principles that you knew to be true, but you just thought it didn't apply to you. And so all of a sudden you encounter this intense and sometimes terrifying, bone-chilling situation in your life, and you realize you have failed really, really big. And if you're going to transition from a manager to a leader, you're going to have to figure out how to navigate these effectively multiple times throughout your career. And if you can't, you don't get to be that leader. It's plain and simple. You can't navigate massive failures and come out on the other side in a positive light, or in a positive, with a productive outcome, and with people around you going through this kind of shambles with you, then you don't get to be a leader. You might be alone. So the question is not if I ever endure a really big failure. The question is, when you endure failure, how will you get through it? And that's what this masterclass is about. By the end of this masterclass, you'll know how I work through massive failure and what to do. So leaders stand on top of a mountain of problems, failures, disappointments, misunderstandings, dreams that kind of had to be changed. And others, the people who are not leaders, they get crushed underneath the weight of all of those things. And in this masterclass, we're going to find out how to stand on top of the mountain of problems instead of being buried beneath it with guilt and anxiety and pure suffering. Okay, so none of that. We don't need any of that. What we need is the person who's standing on top of the mountain of troubles, even though they've come, whether or not they're your fault, doesn't really matter. It's simply a part of your situation that you're in. And as a leader, you have to be able to navigate that. So in this masterclass today, I'm sharing, because sharing is caring. I had to remind myself of that. Sharing is caring. And I'm going to share a few of the situations in my life how we hit rock bottom, completely desolate, complete destruction in almost all areas of life, and then what we did after that. So my name is Jason Ellinger. I'm the CEO of Taika Translations, the TPP team. And please like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss the subsequent masterclass series that I'm putting out on the different subjects that cause you to be able to go from that managerial kind of mindset to becoming an actual leader that your organization needs you to be each and every day. Because leadership is every day. It's not something that you just do on the weekend, or something you just show up and you are, or you got promoted into, and so now all of a sudden you're a leader. That's not what a leader is. A leader is that person who they are before they get put in that position. And if they have those skills, many people are promoted way too early, by the way, into leadership positions that they ought not be in, because they have no skills to be in those positions. In fact, in this day of in this period of my life, I'm very slow to promote people to leadership positions because how what I understood is over many years of being in business and being an entrepreneur over 20 plus years now, that all the characteristics required for a leader to manifest and practice and have the skill to apply to themselves and their teams takes years to get into your mind and in your soul. And sometimes it takes bone crushing, painful situations that take 4 or 5 or 6 years just to work through mentally, psychologically, and then be able to come back on the other side, look at the whole situation and say, these are the things I learned. This is how, and now I know how to apply it. And this is how it impacts the greater team. And now I have this experience and this skill set that I can use to impact the people around me in a very positive way. And then when somebody else is going through the challenges of life, they're going to be able to go through it more effectively because I can lead them through it because I've got the skills required to do that. And I think any great leader will have had to have gone through some kind of very rigorous, challenging situation, bone crushing, petrifying, soul crushing situation in their life in order to be able to get to that place where they can actually manifest and eventually practice all the skills required to be an incredible leader and apply that in a workplace or on a team, in a church, wherever you're a part of a team, maybe a charity organization or a Sunday school class, or I don't know, maybe you're a cleanup crew or something like that. But it doesn't matter. In order to be a great leader, there is some level of suffering and challenge and struggle that you have to go through at a very profound, deep, foundational level in order to be transitioning to that leadership role. And so that's why I said at the beginning of this, if you're going to be making that transition from manager to leader, you're going to be eventually standing on top of a lot of these problems and challenges and bone crushing and spirit crushing mistakes. And if you can't do that, if you can't work through and navigate those and stand on top of them at the end of the day, then you're not ready yet to be a leader. And I'm sorry to say that to you. If that's you out there, if you feel like you're in that position, like I don't have that big challenges in my life and I don't really even see anything in the near future. Well, that might, if you're not at the level of leadership or income that you want to be at, maybe that's that's very likely one of the reasons why, because it takes those challenging situations to forge that person to do. That's why this series is called The Forge. That's why I named this masterclass series The Forge, because it's really forging that leader out of that manager mentality so that they actually get from just checking off boxes and making sure people have done what they're supposed to do on time, to actually making sure they're leading forwards, giving clarity where clarity is due, being inspirational, motivational, and actually having the tenacity, the wherewithal, internal fortitude to weather the storms that you are going to face in business. And somebody think, well, why would you be so negative? I'm not negative. I am 100% positive. It's gonna rain, and it's gonna rain in your life. And whether or not you have the character to deal with it is up to you. And so I'm glad you're in this masterclass today. And I look forward to sharing what we have to talk about today with you and be able to give you some really important tools for how I work through and navigate very, very tough situations in our business, in our life. So problems, the story of my life. One of the things you will realize once you become transitioning into that leadership role, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to the top of the totem pole. I'm on the pedestal, and all of a sudden, you're like, holy freaking cow! Why do I have to deal with this trashy, this difficult issue? Why do I have to deal with these problems? I didn't think I have to deal with that. And then you work through that problem. It's like, okay, good thing that's over. Hope I never have to deal with that again. And then you go a few more months, and you're like, what the heck just happened? Another stupid problem that I never thought I would have to deal with. I just want to lead. I just want to be inspirational. I just want to talk about vision and the future and talk about how our numbers are growing and how all of these things are working out exactly like they should. And it's not the case. And you're in the leadership role, and you hold that leadership role, and it's like, how come everything is not working out perfectly? We're gloriously riding off into the sunset where profits are always high. We're always making more money, and we are never having to deal with any challenging team member drama or issues. Just not the case if you're going to be a leader. And that's actually, I think, one of the biggest sacrifices of being a leader. You have to willingly take on the desire to take part in other people's suffering, to cause the entire organization as a whole to lift itself higher. You have to kind of get down into that suffering with your team in whatever areas of their lives, your direct reports, working with them to actually bring them up to a higher level. So problems, they are the story of your life. If you're a leader, the only thing is, as a leader, you're excellent at working through problems, and you don't get paralyzed with fear. You don't shut down. You don't get completely locked in your mind to where you can't make a decision or move. You take a breath, you look at the scenario, and you step forwards. And so that's where leadership really, really shines. People say, well, I want to be a leader. And then they realize that leaders in struggle, pain, suffering, scary times, and really, really bad situations, that's when you are needed most. That's where your leadership shines. But nobody wants to be in that situation, because if you're in those situations, it's not comfortable. Exactly. That's what you're there for. Some CEO was talking to a business consultant friend of ours, and he said, man, heck, I didn't know my company, I've got a multi-million-dollar company. I never thought I'd be in this situation. And maybe I should just freaking quit all this crap and go get a job somewhere. And the consultant's like, well, wait a minute. Like, this exact moment in your company, this is why you are the leader. This is when you're needed most. This is why you are the big shot. You're the CEO or the president. This is the reason. Because as you work through the sufferings and the challenges and the problems of your business, you hold firm. You hold the line. You declare the vision ahead. You can see what's coming beyond this terrible mess that you're in, and you're holding your team accountable daily, working through the challenges, working through the problems with them, acknowledging the reality of those issues, and working through the program to get to the heights that you all dream of together. That's when you're needed most. You don't just get to cop out, shut down, and exit the facility. That's not leadership. Leadership is needed and most clearly manifests when things get tough and when it's bad. So, some very big things to know. I want you to just kind of introduce some of these things before we walk into the solution, how we work through, how we solve those problems. So I hope that's an encouragement to you as we kind of initiated this training session, because it's very, very important to know those things and to have that kind of mindset as you work through becoming a leader, making that transition to leader. Because if you just make the transition and think that, okay, now I've earned the right to not have to deal with problems, then you're going to do yourself and your entire organization a very big disservice. And if you do your organization a disservice, you either might get fired or your company might fail. And so we don't want that. So listen, every big problem was once a small problem that a leader failed to address. So many problems can be solved at a very low level. And you as a leader, because you are an expert at dealing with problems, because it's kind of your life now as you become a leader. Like, I'm not saying that every day is a drudge and you hate everything about your life and it's so terrible that you always have to be in some kind of very deep pain and struggle. But the point is that you have to realize that that's one of the big parts of leadership. That's one of the roles. Okay, that's one of the reasons we exist. Okay, so as you work through your leadership responsibilities, as you grow in your leadership, your ability to solve these problems, every big problem was once a small problem that a leader failed to address. And the big problems, the better you get at it, get a little bit smaller. They actually get a little bit smaller. Something that you thought might crush you 5 years back, it happens in your life, and because you have a greater perspective, because previously you lived through it 1, 2, or 3 times with worse variables, right? Then this time you're like, okay, we've seen this type of thing before. We can probably get through it. Here's how we dealt with it last time, and here's some supplemental things that we've learned along the way. Let's apply them and see how we can charge forwards through this. And that way you can kind of rally your team and be an encouragement. And now the bigger problems that you have, they look a little bit smaller because you're better at solving the problems. But every big problem was once a small problem. Don't not double negative, right? Don't not um, address the small problems because they can blow up and become far bigger. So always be ready to do that. Now, listen, hubris causes blindness. Hubris, what is that? It's just a fancy word of saying super prideful, being prideful. And unfortunately, hubris is a choice. When you think of any of the great leaders out there, you don't look at them and you say, oh my gosh, they're so freaking prideful. They're amazing. No, you say, that person is unbelievable levels of integrity. That person will sacrifice for the good of his team. That person, he led that team through that storm. That team didn't give up on his team. That team didn't abdicate his role. That leader didn't give up when everything was so dark that nobody thought that they could work through it. That person, that team, that leader actually has a powerful character based in humility. So humility is the beginning of your solution. Pride comes before the fall. We all know that phrase, right? Pride comes before the fall. Your mom said, pride comes before the fall. And then your brothers and sisters pick it up. And every time you do something, they're like, pride comes before the fall. I'm like, shut up. Yeah, I had brothers and sisters too. I know. It's a pain in the butt. Guys, I just wanted to stop for a second. Can you all hear me? Can everybody hear me just fine? Does everything look good on the screen? I have Maggie in the background helping me today. I just want to make sure that everything's good to go. If you have a comment or a question as I'm working through this, please drop it in the comment box. If you have any questions about anything that I'm talking about today, make sure you drop it in the comment box and just let me know. I will find an appropriate moment and I will stop and answer your question, and then we'll continue on in the discussion today. Not discussion, but the mastermind. Okay, so if you have anything, just drop it in and let's charge forward. So hubris causes blindness and it's a choice. Remember this, drive it into the soul, just brand it on your heart. Hubris causes blindness and it is a choice for you and for me. And I've been guilty of this in my own life as I've worked through and caused, maybe even allowed the effects of problems when they didn't have to happen. They didn't need to be there. But because of this, you're blind. You can be blind. And no great leader is considered somebody who is super prideful. So I just want to kind of relay that mindset to you that as we work through if you attend this masterclass, you're like, I know everything about how to become a leader, and I know everything about how to solve problems, and there's nothing I need to learn. Well, you're not going to learn anything, right? It's not going to get any better for you. But if you actually just kind of take everything that's we're talking about today with a kind of a humble view, you might actually be able to take something meaningful home that will help you in the future. Maybe you're at home. Anyways, maybe you'll take something away from this that's meaningful that will help you in the future when things get tough. And that's my hope. That's my really hope. My big hope when I was putting this content together and when I wrote that sharing is caring, I just realized, like, man, if this could help somebody who's in a dark spot, who's in a tough situation in their life, that's who I'm aiming this at. Because because I've been there when it's been dark and there's been nobody around to talk to, deal with the stuff, and I'm just wondered, is this a constant reality that I will live in forever? Will I ever be able to get out of this mess I'm in? And I just want to say, if that's you, yes, you can. You will, you can, and the future is much brighter. Things will be tough, and you will be tougher, and you'll be able to more efficiently work through the challenges that you face. And those challenges won't seem so scary, spirit crushing, and they won't stop you in your tracks anymore. You'll just keep going. All right, so that's just a word for you. All right, so story of my failure. I chose to be blind. I worked as a CFO for an organization in Texas, and I wanted the vision that I had painted in my own mind to be true so badly that I willingly overlooked reality. And I shouldn't have. I was working in the organization. The culture was very poisonous, very toxic. And I was like, oh, but I believe in the vision so much that, I mean, if I could just, if I look past all of that and I just work hard enough, eventually all that stuff will go away. And the problem is when you relinquish your principles and you accept bad behavior in areas that matter to you, and the thing grows, it amplifies the bad characteristics. You don't get to deny, you don't get to go around them. Anything that's bad at the small stage will be amplified dramatically as the thing grows. So the organization I worked at doubled, and then we were on stage to triple. And guess what happened to all the toxicity? It doubled, and then it tripled. And it's like, okay, let's keep. And no, it doesn't. You don't get to live outside of the principles. You have to acknowledge the reality. So I was desperate because I wanted it to work so badly. It was like I was so passionate about that, and it was dumb because I said, I can do this for long enough and work hard enough to outwork all this stupidity and none of the principles that I hold dear to my soul, and know that if you're a prideful, the pride comes before the fall, and you have to treat people with dignity and respect. And if you don't, that you can't have a great relationship. You have to be able to receive criticism and give criticism in an organization. You have to be able to work together in a very kind and emotionally chill manner to be able to effectively communicate. You have to connect on a deep level where nobody has this deep and underlying kind of I'm thinking of the word in a different language, pretty tingy, but it's like if you have a deep and invulnerable spirit where you're always protecting your own, you're protecting yourself and not willing to listen or hear the heart of someone else, and you're not willing to kind of be impacted by or influenced by. You're only willing to direct and give orders, whether they or not they make sense, or whether or not they help anyone, or whether or not it hurts or helps the team, as long as you are the one standing there giving orders. And that doesn't work. It creates a terrible and toxic environment in an organization where no one can flourish. But I was blind to that fact. Those were all realities in our company, and I was completely blind to that fact. I wasn't the leader, or the ultimate leader of the organization, but I was one of them, and I allowed that to be a reality because I wanted the vision to work so badly that I was willing to give up everything on all the behaviors and principles that mattered to me in order to be able to take part in that vision. And ultimately, it all fell apart. It all crumbled. The bigger it got, the worse the problems got, and the worse the drama got. And at one critical moment, it exploded. And so I was desperate and dumb. I've been there, I've been part of the problems. And that created a terrible, crushing failure. Now, guys, I'm not mentioning a bunch of names and very specific situations because some of those people might be listening to this masterclass today. And if they are, I don't want to hurt anybody or be disrespectful and unkind in that very in that way. And so I just want to share that sometimes you can believe so much in something that's toxic and think you can look past the principles and fail. And ultimately, that was your fault. And that, I had to say, was my fault. I couldn't blame anyone else. I couldn't say they did everything so terrible and evil and I'm the only perfect one. I actually had to acknowledge that, hey, I was the one who looked past the correct behavior. I was the one who looked past the incorrect conversations and the incorrect ability to relay information, or the pridefulness. I was the one who looked past all of that. And because of that, I reaped the consequences in my own life of broken relationships from people that I really loved, strained my relationship with my wife, obviously had an impact on my relationship with my children because it was very painful at that time. And ultimately, it cost us our income and cost us the future of that vision and the crushing of those dreams. And so it was a very broken spot after that, all after, when we're in the ashes of all that, after the aftermath of that whole scenario. It was just a very broken and just desperate, in despair moment of our life. I don't know how else to describe it, but when I think back on that, it was not. It was just a very, 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 very painful suffering type situation that you would never have to go through. So how do you work through something like that and then turn something into something beautiful and fruitful? So I changed. That situation in my life gave me the opportunity to change. After the fact, oh, and you can too. You can change. You can become better, and you can create an incredible future. And that's kind of why I'm doing this masterclass today, because I want to remind you of that. Because sometimes someone out there in the darkness, they've said you can't, but I'm here to say you can. After the most crushing situations of your life that you think are career ending, vision ending, relationship ending, all of it all together, you can still come back from that. And that's one of the glorious things about this life, is that no matter how bad it gets and how dark and hard and painful things are, you can still come back from it. It takes time, and you have to apply the principles, and that's what we're going to get to next. So after all of that mess, and this is the thing I wanted to share with you. After that terrible, horrible situation that happened in our life, we're at the bottom. Like when you hit that, you don't bounce. Like you don't bounce back. You freaking splat. And you hit the bottom and you just splat. It's nothing pretty. There's no bouncing anywhere. You scrape and freaking claw after you kind of collect yourself. And then you get to climb out. But we built what we have today, which is a multi-million-dollar organization, completely debt-free, beautiful estate that we have, and so many aspects of the vision that I had for my own personal life have been able to come true simply because of what I'm going to talk about in the next slides. So stick with me if you are kind of getting bored at this point. So don't just think that it's all about motivational. You can, you will, you might. You say, listen, we're going to get to the tactical, but I had to introduce those things because I want you to know that through the process of all of this journey as an entrepreneur, that if you have been through bone crushing pain and struggles, like this is the one I just explained was just one of the like 4 major ones that have happened in our lives. And so so if you're out there and you're in that kind of situation and you're working through it, you're in good company because I'm with you in that. So after the fact, we built a multi-million-dollar organization, and it's one of the biggest blessings of my life, and it brings joy to me and my family each and every day as we work to grow and prosper in that. And it's not without its own struggles too. By the way, yeah, you don't just finish and arrive and no longer have to deal with troubles. I mean, I've had some of the best moments in the company that I currently operate, and I've had some of the worst moments, some of the biggest betrayals, some of the biggest discouraging results, some of the deepest relational challenges with team members, some of the scariest nights. I've had all of that with the current situation, with the current organization, and we've continued building it each and every day. We just continue to take that next step, which allowed us to be able to have something that we can profoundly enjoy and create a legacy for our family for generations to come. So you can do that too. And many times it's after the brokenness. It's out of that terrible broken down person that went through that terrible moment of suffering, that period of suffering in your life, you get to create something incredible, amazing, and beautiful. So step 1. If you know me, you know that I go from the theory, kind of the overarching ideology behind all of this, and I go right to the tactical because that's kind of like characteristics of myself. I hate when you can't do freaking something with the content that you're listening to. I really want to be able to take that information and apply it right away so that as we move forwards in our lives, so that we can actually take it like, okay, this is how I work through that. Now I have a resource. Now I can actually do something. It's not simply something I'm hearing somebody inspirationally speak about in some way, shape, or form. This is actually tactical. We're going to get down to tactical, and this is how we do it. So guys, the first step when you are in it, when the suffering is being realized, you've got fired from the job, you lost the relationship, you are in this terrible dramatic situation on your team, and things are just suck. Okay, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that you got to mourn the loss. You mourn it, mourn the loss, acknowledge the pain, acknowledge the suffering, acknowledge the loss. You can't just put it out of your misery. You can't just put it to the side and say, no, it didn't happen. You can't just ignore all of the implications that it's having in your life, the repercussions that it's making in every area of your life. Maybe it's a financial, maybe it's a relational, maybe it's a spiritual, maybe it's a physical, even. Any of those, you can't deny them. You have to mourn the loss of whatever it is, the expectation, whatever it is. Mourn it. Allow that we were made to acknowledge when something bad happens, we were made to acknowledge that and work through it. So you acknowledge the hurt in your life and the acknowledge that pain. Cry it out if you have to. If you don't acknowledge suffering, it's very, very unhealthy. Your body bears the scars of all of the things it knows to be true about your life, whether or not you acknowledge it. Your mind and your body, it bears the scars of them. Why do so many people die from what do they call the diseases of grief, right? The internal organ diseases that kill people. They call them, I think that's the correct terminology for it. It may be slightly different, but basically that's the idea, is the disease, the grief diseases that people have been grieved for so long because their body knows, but they have not acknowledged that pain, that suffering, that loss that they've experienced, but their body knows it and it's grieving that. But they don't allow themselves to deal with it because maybe they haven't been able to they weren't in a situation where they felt like they could unselfishly acknowledge it. They just felt like, well, I have to be strong, or I have to be brave, or I have to just push through it without acknowledging any of this bad stuff that happened. No, you weren't created to be able to do that. You can't do that. Not, at least not healthily. That can kill you if you don't acknowledge the pain and the suffering and the loss that you did. You have to mourn the loss. And so the first thing I did was I mourned the loss of my vision that I thought was going to come true in 5-10 years. I mourned the loss of that, cried that out. Not acknowledging it is not healthy. Suffering requires an audience. So get some trustworthy relationship. Only the trustworthy relationships that you have near you, that you can really depend on, that show in not just words, in actions that they care. This might be a spouse, it might be a family member, it might be a friend, but you have to be able to acknowledge, and suffering requires the audience. And so talk through that with someone. So that's what I did. In so many of these situations, my spouse, I'm sorry, it's hot in this room, so I'm sweating a little bit. So my spouse helps me to navigate those things, and she is one of my most valued counselors in my life. And so we were able to work through talking through so many of those situations. So pull the people who love you close to you. Don't push them away. The tendency for all of us is to kind of stay isolated. Now, isolation might be helpful for a little bit. 1-2 days, you spend some time with God and spend some time alone. Maybe go to a hotel room, and maybe go to somewhere where you can take long walks in nature or on the beach. Maybe you have a little bit of isolation time, acknowledging the hurt, crying it out, thinking about the situation. But whatever you do, don't just ignore it. Acknowledge it and mourn the loss. That's step 1. Step 2, write 2 letters. You need to write some letters if you're going through something and recovering from something. So this is what I did. So you can write 2 letters. Write a letter to yourself. And what do you write? What do you write when you're going through a tough time? You write how this hurt and injured you. Write it down. And what you wish the reality was, what you wish that relationship would have turned into, or what your dream was for the situation or that company, what you hoped and dreamed and desired deeply. Write that out. Get it out on paper. And write how you changed as a person as a result of this situation. And what are some of the things that is changing in you as a result of going through this deep and profound struggle in your life. So write yourself a report on these things, those 2 letters, and then write a letter to whom you wish would change, even if you don't send it. And a lot of times I recommend that you don't even send it, but write them a letter too. and write how that they injured and hurt you, and what you wish was true, and then how this situation changed you, changed the relationship, and obviously your perspective, and maybe your future choices as a result of the situation. So don't skip that. It's very important because this helps you to acknowledge and get out what is in your heart and your soul and your mind. And just get it out of your soul and get it on paper and write it out. Even if nobody else ever reads that. That's not the point. The point is for you to go through this process that helps you heal. Because if you keep everything inside all the time, it's going to take a toll on you. Remember, your body bears the marks of your sufferings, your situations that you are acknowledging or not. And so it's important for you to get that out of you and start to work through the process of healing. First, by acknowledging. Second, write yourself the letters so that you can start working through these problems. All right. Third, put the brick down. Now, put the brick down is something that I learned from John Deloney. And John Deloney is a psychologist that works with Dave Ramsey, and he talks about as you endure situations in your life, mistakes that you've made, mistakes that you were a part of, or challenges in your life that you cannot impact one way or another. Your current situation, like there's no way you can make any of it better, and you deeply are saddened and maybe even suffer from that situation being a part of your life. So he says, take a brick, put it in a backpack, or just walk around with it. Walk around with the brick in your hand in the backyard, or maybe you have a piece of land or wherever. Walk around with that brick or rock or whatever, something heavy, just to acknowledge the burden, on the actual physical burden it is taking on you, and walk around with it for a while. Walk around with it for 15, 20 minutes. Hold it in your hand, walk around with it. Think about the thing that you're kind of making that, like manifesting that burden in your hand for, and then put it down. Even you have to bury the thing, but put it down. And that practice of bearing that burden, thinking about that suffering that you've gone through, and then you put it down and you release that pain from your life. Physically, mentally, just kind of helping you to really get in the process of, I am ridding myself of this thing, because so many times, because suffering is such a powerful tool for creating neural pathways in our minds and our hearts. So often, okay, so the point is, the more you go to a thought in your mind, the easier it is to get there the next time. For good thoughts and for bad thoughts. That's why it's so hard to get rid of addictions. When you go to a certain place in your mind, it creates a pathway. And once you go to it again, it creates another pathway. And after a while, that's just a beaten path where you can just go right, slip right into that thought process. And so this putting the brick down is you starting to say, I'm not going to travel down that path in my mind and in my heart anymore. I'm going to put the brick down. I'm going to bury it, and it's gone. And no longer do I travel down this pathway in my heart and in my mind, so that it can no longer have an impact on my future. And this is so important, because if you allow yourself to continually go back and forth on that beaten pathway to that suffering in your mind, and then in your heart, and in your mind and your heart. In Christianity, we have this phrase that says, out of the heart are the issues of life. Meaning, wherever you spend the most time in your heart and in your mind, that eventually is going to manifest itself in the world around you. God knows this. He created us like this. Okay, talking to the Christians here. If you don't believe in God, I hope you do one day, but I believe in God. And the Bible says that if you set your mind and your heart on something over time, and it's in the will of God for your life, it's gonna happen around you. So, set your heart on the things that are good and right and true. That's why The Bible also says, think of things that are good, true, lovely, of a good report. Whatever is good and beautiful and wonderful, think on all of these things. Why? Because God knows there's neural pathways that we are creating in our minds each and every day. And when we're thinking about that relationship that didn't happen, that we can have no influence over whatsoever anymore, but it's still causing us grief, then we are inflicting pain on ourselves. So you take the break, walk around with it for a while, and set it down. Guys, these are ways to start healing from the trauma, the challenge, the suffering. Okay, so first, acknowledging it. Second, writing the letter. Third, put the brick down. It's time. It's time. And you need to do this quickly, like within 2 weeks. That's probably 3 weeks of this really terrible situation happening in your life, so that you can move through to start building again. Give it some time, and time is an element, but you have to start taking the right and proactive steps that are going to help you grow and get out of the mess that you've gotten in. So from this point on, the mourning, it starts to go away. I'm not saying that it's completely gone. There's no magic trick that you get to not feel pain anymore. We're humans. We've been through a thing. We've had some broken stuff happen inside of us, and it's painful. And this such is life. You're human. I'm human. It's part of our experience. But the conversations in your head, they're no longer allowed. The conversations that you want to have with that person, it's not in the room. It's not even in the state. They're no longer allowed. You don't have those conversations anymore. Because every time you do that, you reinforce that neural pathway to that area of your life that is deep and terrible suffering that broke you. You don't need to be there. You need to be moving towards productivity, profitability, being a blessing to your family, helping your life, helping the people around you, being a positive, powerful influence. And if you're broken, if you're suffering, if you have anxiety, if you're in despair, do you think you're going to be able to do that? You're absolutely not. So this is step 3 is the hard one. That's why I actually like that physical aspect of actually put this thing down and let it go away. The mourning stops. The conversations in your heads are no longer allowed. The rent-free negativity no longer gets to be in your head. Guys, I'm not for positive thinking stuff. Like, that's not what I really don't believe in that. But I do believe in setting your mind on productive, joyful, and productive, profit. What is it? What was my rule? Productive, profitable, and joyful. That's my rule for the thoughts that I allow to stay in my head. Productive, profitable, and joyful. If they're not that, they don't get to stay in my head. If it's not productive, if it's not profitable, and if it's not joyful, it can't be in my head. Because if I want a productive, profitable, joyful life, like the Bible says, out of the heart are the issues of life. I need to be productive, profitable, and joyful inside first. And if inside it's dark and painful and sad, how will I be able to be productive, profitable, and joyful in the world around me over the long term? Because it's not just the day-to-day. You could fake 1 or 2, 3 months, maybe even 2 or 3 years, but you can't fake a lifetime. And so rent-free negativity and all that stuff doesn't get to live inside your head anymore, because what's inside you is eventually going to be around you. And so I think it was Zig Ziglar said, if you want to increase your standard of living, anyways, he said, increase your standard of living so that the elements of your life around you, so how you impact the world around you, increase how the positive, productive, and joyful impact that you have on everything around you. And over time, you'll start seeing somehow magically everything else is starting to be amazing. Why is that? Because you changed. Because you decided that no longer am I going to live in this place of fear, in this place of despair, in this place of anxiety, because I've dealt with it. And so many of us suffer because we haven't freaking dealt with the problem. We have ignored it. We said it doesn't exist. And we keep going. and our body bears the marks of them. We think we get to live outside of the principles. Somehow, like you're God or something. You can live outside of the principles of reality and not be impacted. But we can't. We're all humans. And if you're making that transition to a leader, you have to acknowledge this. We're humans, we suffer, and there's ways to work through suffering to where you can be positive, productive, and joyful after it. I had to learn this lesson the hard way, because after that time in my life explained about earlier in this masterclass, I really went through a time where I struggled very, very deeply I had conversations with people that were not even in the state anymore. Like they weren't even anywhere close to me. But I was like, man, I would tell you this and this, this, and man, you should have done that. You can't talk to me like that, and that's not respectful, and that's not profitable. It's not going to create a productive outcome, and blah blah blah. And there's nobody freaking there. How does it help anyone? Fighting at this point, when we put the brick down, that no longer gets to live in our heads. Acknowledgement has happened, and you are changed. You have changed. Change is intentional. It's not a side effect of somehow living further and everything kind of melts away. It's an intentional decision. Just like hubris, it's a decision to be prideful. It's not just an accident. It's a decision. Acknowledgement is a decision, and changing is a decision. You can just change. Become a person with higher integrity. Become a person who honors their word. Become a person who respects others. Be known for being an honorable and noble, being of honorable and noble character. If you want to be, you just change. And how do you change? You deal with the stuff in your past. You put the bricks down. You mourn the loss. And now we step forwards. And we make sure that the negativity, it doesn't live in our head anymore. The conversations that we're having with people that aren't even in the room, they don't have anymore. An acknowledgement has happened. And now you are changed. Now, the guard. As soon as you do these three things, which I know they're not easy because I'm human. My name is Jason. I'm human, and I go through suffering too, just like all the rest of you. So congratulations. We're in the same boat. We're all humans. Practice is required. No one is inherently good at working through and getting over suffering. No one is good at this. No one is good at creating masterpieces out of failure. It doesn't get modeled for us, and many of the models around us are really bad models. That's why we have so many people that are addicted to so much stuff, because they haven't worked through, maybe they haven't acknowledged, they haven't worked through any of those troubles, or maybe they've gone through multiple tragedies or seen terrible atrocities in their life, and they've never had the opportunity to effectively work through those things, put those things down, get them out of their life, and start to work through more productive and joyful living. But that's not you. You are someone who is strong. You are somebody who can work through those challenges. You are somebody who acknowledges the pain, doesn't just ignore it, and works through it in a systematic way to help you cope and be more prosperous in your life. And as a leader, that's something you have to get very good at, because trouble is coming one way or the other. One pastor said, if you've never been through any massive suffering in your life, just live a little longer. Just live a little while longer, and you'll go through something that's very deep and very painful and ultimately very meaningful. So the guard, practice is required. Once you get through these steps, you're practicing these steps. Now, daily, complicated, intrusive thoughts will come into your life in different ways, trying to bring you back to that point of anguish that you were in. And you have to guard, like literally guard, against those terrible, terrible situations, those thoughts that are coming into you each and every day. And the only way to do it is to guard against it. You have to just know that they're coming, and that when they come, you're like, nope, we don't go down that narrow pathway anymore. We don't go to that conversation in my head anymore. We don't even talk to that person in my head anymore. Why? Because that leads to suffering. And that takes us back to a dark spot that's not as positive, it's not productive, and it's not joyful. So why would I go there? I want my life to be about positive things, about productive things, about joyful things, things that create a better outcome for myself and the people all around me. And if I spend time there, it's not going to happen. So guard against those very powerful and complicated intrusive thoughts. It's not something you get to not do. As a leader, you have to like, no, we will not think like that's me talking to myself. We will not think about this. I will not think about that stuff now because that does not help me to be a better leader. So you choose moment by moment to not allow rent-free thinking. Just think of your mind as real estate. So your mind is the place where everything in your life grows because everything that you do comes out of you, and it has to come out of your heart and your mind being in alignment and taking you somewhere. And if you're not, and if all of that is dark, your whole life will be dark. The Bible talks about that. If the eye is evil, everything will be evil. Right? I'm sorry I'm sounding a little bit like a Baptist preacher today. That's not my intention, but my faith does get into all of the workings of my business and my family and everything else in my life. It matters deeply to me. So as we work through the content, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry because I believe it is very important. So you choose the future will be more of the stuff that you love and less of the stuff that you don't. This is the point. This is where it starts to get really exciting because you've gone through the process of mourning, you've dealt with it, you've laid it down, and now you're protecting your mind and heart against the negative thoughts that are happening around that issue that want to take you back to that issue and cause grieving in your soul around that thing, causing it to be darker inside of you. And now you're choosing the future will be more of the stuff that you want and love and less of the stuff that you don't. And at this stage, for this practice already starts to bring elements of the stuff you love back into your life. And then this is the time when you acknowledge time is an element in healing. So, like I said, I mean, if you break a bone, okay, you go to the doctor, he puts a cast on it, maybe he has to put a few pins in it to put the bone right in the back in the right place. And then what? It's just healed, right? It's done. You go home and now you can jump on the trampoline again and climb a tree. No, it doesn't work like that. You actually have to wait. There's some pain involved, and you just kind of have to wait. And you have to medicate it. And you have to make sure that you do your job guarding your cast to make sure it's protected and safe, like guarding your mind. You have to protect it to make sure it's safe so it doesn't get moved around and knocked around and broken again. You actually have to keep your mind, right? You got to keep it safe. You got to keep it, you guard it, and you have to keep your arm safe, right? So it heals. And it takes time. There's amount of time that it takes to heal every injury. And for every person, it's different. It's not the exact same amount of time. We don't all just get in one bucket of this is the amount of time it takes to heal any problem or this class of problem. No, it doesn't work that way. Every problem, challenge, depth of suffering, depths of betrayal, it takes its own specific amount of time. But you as the guarding your thoughts, making sure nothing gets to live rent-free in your head, can increase the rate of which you heal and the productivity at which you're able to operate while you heal in a huge way by doing these things. So, the inevitable spirit. My personal view, body is made of your body, soul, and your spirit. The body represents the physical changes required that you to make in your life. Maybe you need to make some goals. Maybe you need to do some physical exercise. Maybe somebody called you fat, obese, and overweight, and you're like, hey, I don't want to be that anymore. I'm gonna kill that negative idea. I'm gonna go do something, and you actually change the way you eat, right? And you change your body and physical stuff, right? The soul, you make you, your personality, your inclinations, what you love, what you want, envision for your life, and the things that make you express yourself, that's you, right? Your soul, and then your spirit, the sacred connection to who is holy. And I believe in God, so Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. So the sacred is the connection to who is holy, and the tendency for so many people going through challenges is to completely turn away from God. But in heaven's name, to what are you going to turn? Like God, the creator of all, who loves you, who might can help you, who can help you work through the situation in time, in his way, with a purpose, or you turn to what? An addiction? Uh, I don't know. Something else? Something else that cannot help you? And so I think healing requires acknowledgement of the work of work required in all three. Right? Because I believe God is over and the creative of all three. I believe God is a part of the healing process. You can't just say I'm only body and I'm only soul, or I'm only body or I'm only soul, I'm only spirit. And we actually have a physical body. You can see it, touch it, feel it. Like, ow, that hurt, right? So the sacred connection to what is holy. Don't don't uh, ignore the fact that you have a spirit, and that that there is a greater purpose in all this, and there can be a greater purpose in all this for you. And so many times we get into this mindset that there is no greater purpose for any of the suffering that we're enduring. It just is, and it's not the case. So you need to get into a community that helps your spirit heal too. I don't care what community that is for you. Just get into a community and heal, because isolation will kill you. I want to be clear about that. It will harm you, and you don't want to be in isolation. You can't. We were not made to be in isolation. We were made to be in connection, to share our suffering, to walk through this challenge of life, the suffering situations of life with other people, and to heal in connection with others. So don't isolate yourself, because it will harm you. Do not do that. Get into a community that helps your spirit heal too. So don't ignore the spirit aspect of healing, and go to your local church, local Alcohol Anonymous group, a local uh, group of buds that can help, or sisters that can help you get through something. But do something where you connect with other people, because if you are in complete isolation all the time, this is not a place where it won't help you heal. Bring other people in your life. Make sure that you don't quench, kill, or ignore your spirit. Body, soul, and spirit, we're made up of all three, and you have to acknowledge healing in all three areas. The physical thing, you do some physical stuff to fix the situation. Maybe you've got to move to a different state. Maybe you've got to try to buy another house. Maybe you got to go get a different job. Maybe whatever it is. And the soul, make sure that you're keeping your heart and mind on the things that are good, right, and true, profitable, productive, and joyful. And the spirit, make sure you're connected to who is holy. And in doing that, you need to be connected to a community that helps your spirit heal. So the reality that is trouble will continue to come in our lives. Sometimes it can be a depressing thought. But as the longer you live and the more challenges that you work through and the more crushing they are, the more perspective you have to be able to deal with the next ones that are coming. So the role of faith is vital in all of these things. Never lose your faith. The Stockdale paradox, I've talked about this. I talked about it in the previous masterclass, but I talk about it all the time because it's so meaningful to me, is that Stockdale was shot down over Vietnam. He was the most decorated and highest ranking officer shot down over Vietnam. And he was put in a prison camp. And I think he was there for a total of 8 years. And he never knew during that entire time he was in the prison camp if they were going to let him out. And they didn't give him if any of his rights that he would have as a normal prisoner of war. They tortured him many, many times and tried to use him for propaganda against the enemy. So the Stockdale paradox is ultimately victory is inevitable, but today things are really tough. So acknowledge the reality that things are tough today, but ultimately you're going to work through this challenge, this suffering, this pain, this struggle, and the role of faith is absolutely vital. And that's why I talked about the spirit, because faith in the spirit and being able to believe that something eventually will work out for your benefit is very, very, very powerful in your life, and it is vital. So when I went through those terrible struggles, I never lost faith that in the end we would prevail, even though things around me were dark. But I did have to make some decisions. I did have to make some decisions to not talk to people in my head anymore. Let those thoughts live rent free in my head anymore, and put other thoughts in my head and my heart that would cause prosperity in my life around me. Because I mean, it was bad. I had no income, so many broken relationships. The place that I lived was taken away from us. Our marriage, we were at a tough spot in our marriage. And when you're in that type of situation, like we freaking lost every freaking thing that mattered. And you choose to believe that you, in the end, can prevail. For the first 2 weeks, it was kind of rough. But after that, we started to work through this stuff and started to put the brick down, stop the thoughts in the head, making sure we are guarding our mind with positive, productive, and joyful thoughts that caused us to be positive, productive, and joyful in the world around us. And then we're able to get to inevitable victories because we applied ourselves in that very productive and profitable way. And you can too. And this is how I work through so many of the struggles that we face in our own life. And the Stockdale paradox is simply make sure that no matter what you're going through, you acknowledge the reality without ever losing faith that in the end you will prevail. And so I just want to kind of transfer that to you, that that's absolutely a possibility and reality for you, even if you're in a dark spot, that in the end you ultimately inevitably prevail, but you do have to make some key decisions along the way and deal with the grief in order to be able to productively and profitably move forwards. So it's time to revisioneer your life. Write down the answers to these questions. What do you want your future to look like? What must I change in order for those things to be true? And what is most important for me to do right now to create that reality? If steps are required, write those steps out. Don't just leave it bland and don't just leave it unclear. Now that you've done all this stuff that we talked about previously in this masterclass, answer these questions. And how can I visualize my progress? Put a calendar, put a progress meter on your refrigerator. I don't care what it is, but make sure you can visualize your progress in these areas that matter. And this is the time you start to visioneer what the future of your life is going to be. Now that you're in a state of mind where you can, and you can start thinking positive, productively, and joyfully, now you can do this. Now you start to place these elements back into your life and say, I want more of this. Okay, how are we going to do that? Well, this has to be true. What must be true in order for that to be a reality? This, and this. Okay, how do we do that, and that? Sometimes it's very basic, like, I have no job, get a job. Okay, what are my qualifications? What can I do? Okay, now I can go apply for these types of jobs. Now go do that. Okay, or I have no place to live, I need a place to live. So if you have a job and no place to live, that's good, because at least you have an income. You can find a place to live to pay for a place to rent, right? And so you can start working through the steps, but you can't work through the steps if you're full of grief and everything's dark. And that's why I went through the other steps first, and now it's time to revisioneer your life and just keep it simple. I've gone through the visioneering process in previous master classes, spent whole master class on this subject, but at this point, it's just time to answer the basic questions and be like, okay, life fell apart. We got through the struggling. I breathing again. What do I want more of in my life? What do I want my future to look like? What must I change in order for that future to be true? What is most important for me to do right now that I can create that? And then how can I visualize my progress? Make sure you do that. Just start. Take your steps and start making progress on these each and every day. And if you can't work on them every day, it means you're not granular enough. If you can't work on that future reality each and every day, if your activity can't bring you, or your daily activity cannot bring you to whatever it is that really matters to you, that you wrote down that you want more of in your life, then you need to get more granular so that you can understand how your daily activities are taking you there. So don't overcomplicate it. It's not something super crazy complicated. That's why I just put it on a single slide. If you have to go back, take a snapshot of that slide and just write the answer to that question. You're the only one who knows the answers to what you want. Like, So many people they don't get this. Like they think it's some super crazy complicated. Like if I get the answer wrong, then my life will be a miserable failure. And if you don't answer the question, your life will be a miserable failure. So at least answer something, right? Well, I've never done it before, so I'm not so good at it. Well, you shouldn't be any good at it. You've never done it before. At least get some practice, and then we'll be moving in the right direction. Okay, so just write down the answer to that question, and then just start. Make sure it's granular enough to where you can work on it each and every day. Decide and go forwards. You have the choice. You get to make the choice today. So I implore you, encourage you, and hopefully hope that this deeply helps you if you're working through a deep struggle that you need to get out of and create a better future for your own life from. And this, if you're going from manager to leader, and if you're going to be dealing with more complicated issues for yourself or your organization, you're the owner of the company or the head of a big team, then you're going to have to be able to get really good at this stuff. Because, I mean, maybe you do the whole thing in one day. That sometimes is a possibility if that's the challenge. Maybe you can even skip over some of the steps because you actually don't need to get there anymore because you're so fortified now. You're good at the process of working through the challenges that you don't need to do the setting down brick phase or whatever it is. But the point is, go through that so that you can get it out, and then you can reframe your mind to be positive, productive, and joyful, and charge forwards. So mistakes do happen, and it will always be there always be mistakes somewhere in your life. Yes, Maggie just let me know that there's a question, and I would be more than happy to answer that. Put it in the chat, and I'll get to it as soon as I just right after this slide. So when you hit a speed bump, and you're going to hit a speed bump, acknowledge the speed bump and move forward anyways. When you start to get a little progress in your life, some of those people that maybe were a part of that last problem, now they see you kind of getting some progress in your life and making some good positive elements in your world around you, like, hey, I actually want to be part of that. You might just need to keep them out of it because they were part of creating all the tragedy of your previous situation, and you're probably going to need to stay separate. So make sure you keep negative people out. Otherwise, they will, like the last phrase alludes to, don't ever argue with stupid people, because they will only drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. So don't ever argue with stupid people. Be careful of that. As you get more success, as you get more productive and profitable, as you create a better life, more people are going to want to come into your life and be part of it. Make sure you only let the ones in that are actually helping prosper, grow, and move things forwards, not dragging you back to a place that you don't want to be in. And so mistakes happen. That's life. But I just want to make sure that I warn you about a couple of these things as you work through the challenges and they come up, you're not blindsided. I want to make this as comprehensive as possible. All right. What is one way a leader so here's the question, came from the chat, and it says, what is one way as a leader you help your team members and they are suffering and pain that they are going through? Okay, what's one way as a leader that I help my team work through the suffering and pain that they're going through? Okay, so so many people, in my organization, I talk about, and I've done masterclasses on this as well, having one-on-ones every single week with your team, and also having your team members submit weekly reports. So in my organization specifically, I stay very connected to my team. I have a vulnerability-based trust with my team members so that when they're going through struggles, odds are I'm going to know about it. Like right now, I can think of one of my team members' children who's sick and they're getting treatment because they're going through a tough spot and it's painful for them. And I know about them and I communicate with them about that. And as a leader of my organization, whatever way I can help to make sure that that's okay, that's facilitated, the healing is facilitated, or treatment is gotten, or if we need to sponsor something, some kind of maybe treatment for a team member or a child or someone in their family, we do it. Like if we have the means, let's do that. And so there's so many different ways that you can help your team members as they're working through suffering, that they're not all cookie cutter. And so that's one of the ways that we help our team members work through challenges is first, we know about it because we're connected to each other on a vulnerability based trust level. And then second, whenever we have the means to be able to step in, we do that. Of course, we always pray for each of our team members. Remember, I'm a Jesus believing Christian, and believe that God helps and intervenes as well. So we always pray for our team as well, and that helps as you work through those challenges. So thank you for the great question. I really appreciate that. It's very meaningful, and I think that as leaders work to be those type of leaders that actually continually serve their team, you will always be able to find places where your team members are in need, and that you enter into that suffering with them to be able to serve them really, really well, and kind of take some of the load of that suffering as you work together and grow this awesome organization or team, or work in this awesome mission that you have, that you work together with them in. So thanks again for that. Really great question. All right, listen, be content with how long it takes to heal. Winning requires an element of time, and so does healing. And so as you heal, you don't just get to be positive, productive, and joyful, and then everything just becomes better. Roses, flowers, and now we're dancing down the hallways and there's hearts and flowers and rainbow colored toilet paper being thrown everywhere. That's not how this works. It takes time. You start practicing being productive. Start talking to your spouse kindly. Start talking to your children in a loving way, giving them hugs each day, being intentional about going on walks to clear your mind. It takes time to get through all of these things. And as you add elements of positive, productive, and joyful back into your life, it will start causing the elements, all the areas of your life, to be positive, productive, and joyful. But it takes time for you to impact all of those, so that those areas can also impact your life. So listen, you're defined by what you do today and forwards. Today and beyond, you're defined not by what you've done, but you're defined now by what you do today and forwards. Decide what the definition is by the actions that you take today. That's how you vote on your future, is your actions. That's how you determine your future, is the actions you take today. That's why I said in the previous slide, that if you can't work on being that thing you're looking forward to in your life each day, that you need to continue working to make it more granular. Otherwise, if you can't work on it each and every day and apply that positive, productive, and joyful mentality to it as you're working on it, it's not granular enough. And if you're not working on it each day in every area of your life, then those elements aren't going to become a reality. So be intentional and make sure they are. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. The next masterclass is on vulnerable connections. Remember, I talked in that answer about the answer to this question about the vulnerable connections that I have with my team. I'm going to talk about that in the next masterclass. And if you miss it, you'll be missing a really critical class on how to be able to connect and eliminate so many challenges from your business. So transition from manager to leader by being able to connect vulnerably with your team. Sometimes making mistakes, sometimes having to work through them, but being vulnerable and being connected. And if you can do this as a leader, if you can connect vulnerably with your team, you can go to heights that you never thought in your business and in the relationships with your team members. And it's incredibly meaningful. It's incredibly edifying. It's incredibly, it's one of the biggest blessings of my life, and one of the biggest challenges, because being vulnerable means you have to be vulnerable on both sides. So join us with exactly how we start building that into our relationships, into our company. And I look forward to seeing you next week at this masterclass, same time, same station, where we'll be talking through vulnerable connections. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.